So one of the mistakes I made was in the middle, I didn't introduce our beloved brother, Ismail Bullock. I was kind of lost at that time, and there was no introduction, and he just came up. So I would like to introduce him right now, since he has a speech coming up. So Brother Ismail, he reverted to Islam when he was 14, when he witnessed some students in his school who were praying in the classroom. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. I've got the facts correct. So this is one of the things that you should remember. Next time you feel ashamed or embarrassed to pray, Dhuhr or Asr in your school, you have to remember this, that one like great person became Muslim just because of embraced Islam, because of witnessing this. Well, without further ado, Brother Ismail has also worked, he has a degree in business and media, and also a bachelor's in Islamic studies from the Preston University of Ajman, as well as a postgraduate diploma in strategic management, So he has a regular chat show on Sharjah TV and has appeared on TV many times. So you can always catch him up on, if you watch Sharjah TV, I guess, on one of his regular chat shows, or you can go on YouTube or watch one of his videos. So I guess now I will pass the stage to him.
السلام عليكم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبع سنته إلى يوم الدين. Jazakallah khair for the slightly exaggerated introduction. Great person, very exaggerated. But actually this next lecture kind of ties into greatness, because we want to emphasize on aiming high. Because again, that's another misunderstanding. Maybe there's some possible groups from amongst the Muslims, and they want you to have this idea that to be a good Muslim, to be religious, you have to be, of course you have to be humble, but extra humble. Like Brother Faris said earlier, I believe it was, almost as if, we're supposed to be in a cave, or we're not supposed to, we shouldn't aim high, we should just settle for whatever we have and just be grateful. But that's not the reality. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that in Jannah, there is 100 levels. 100 levels in Jannah. And then he said, in between each level is the distance like between the earth and the heavens. Very, very big distance between each level. Now, one of you, we may say to ourselves, I will just be glad just to get into any part of Jannah. And we may even find ourselves, maybe we've done this, where we're making dua or we're asking Allah, oh, well, just let me enter Jannah. Anyhow, which way, just let me be in Jannah. But this, believe it or not, is not what we should do. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said that there are 100 levels. Ask Allah for the highest level. Always aim for the best. Always aim to be as high as possible. And that is how the believer should be. We shouldn't aim for second place. We shouldn't want to be mediocre. We shouldn't want just to be like everybody else. And if we look with the prophets of the past, like Sulaiman alayhi salam, we will find that he was a prophet, a king, the son of a king. And on top of that, did he just say, look, I'm a prophet, alhamdulillah, I'm a prophet, a chosen one, guaranteed paradise. I am a king who is son of a king. You'd think, well, mashallah, he's made it, right? He's the king, son of a king, a prophet. What more could he possibly want? But he said to Allah, give me a kingdom that nobody has ever seen. So he aimed high. Musa alayhi salam, one of the great 5 messengers mentioned in the Quran, he was chosen by Allah as a prophet. Allah spoke to him, actual speech. But did he say that was enough? He said, oh Allah, let me see you. Okay, he didn't see Allah, but he aimed high. And as we mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ himself taught us to aim high by saying, ask Allah for the highest part of Jannah. Don't just ask Allah for Jannah. And we're going to see some quotes here from some of the famous companions, and we'll go on to some examples of people of the past who have aimed high. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who was known to be the 5th Khalifa. He was around the 12th or 13th, but he was known as he was called by many as if he was the 5th of the Khulafa, because he was so close in piety and actions to those 4 great Khulafa. And he said on his deathbed, I have a soul that aims high, emphasizing the importance of aiming high. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he heard about the gates of paradise, he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam if it's possible to be invited through all the gates of paradise. So again, he was aiming high. He wasn't satisfied, or he didn't just say, inshallah, I will be entered. I'm one of the guaranteed to be entered into paradise, so I'm happy. He said, oh, Ya Rasulullah, is it possible to go through every single gate of paradise? We know there's gates for the fasting ones, various gates. He said, can I go through all of them? And I want to mention a story. I won't tell you who the person is until the end, of a small boy. By the time he was 9 or 10, he'd memorized the whole Quran. And when the other children, which is a natural thing to do, they wanted to play. So when they were playing around, they would be dragging him to come and play with them. He would be dragging away to go and try and sit in the circles of knowledge with the scholars. And one scholar actually passed one day and saw this happening. And he stuck in his memory. He said, what kind of boy is this, These guys are telling him come and play. And he's pulling away from them, from having fun, and he wants to go and sit with the adults. And later this boy said to his father, I want to study Islam. The father said, his father was a grocery owner. So his father wasn't a big businessman where, he's naturally, in theory, due to be successful because he's from a long line of successful businessmen or something along those lines. He owned a grocery. He told him, I need you to work with me in the grocery store. So the boy was working in the grocery store, but the father noticed that even when he's behind the counter, he's just reading books of knowledge. He's trying to increase his knowledge. So in the end, he said to him, son, I understand that this is a passion you have. So he let him go. And then this boy became more knowledgeable. And then he wrote 2 very powerful books, which I'm going to see if any of you can know those books. This was Imam al-Nawawi. Who can tell me the 2 main books that he authored? Can anyone? Imam al-Nawawi. The name al-Nawawi kind of gives it away for at least one of the books. This brother. Riyadh al-Salihin. Yep. And I've also given you Imam al-Nawawi. Can anyone think of a book that has Nawawiyya? The 40 Hadith of Imam Nawawi. These are probably the most profound books that we use. Even the scholars, they will say to you, if you want a book that you can gather some of the best hadith from Bukhari and Muslim, they'll tell you Riyadh al-Salihin. This was the son of a grocery store owner. But look how he reached. And he actually only lived a very short life. His books are with us now. We all, as many of you know, we study his hadith. Actually, the hadith that he compiled in this book, the scholars have said, if you just learnt 40 hadith, this would be enough for you. There's 2 or 3 in hadith in there that are known as the mother of the religion, the pillar of the religion, half of the religion. Just the first few hadith have so much to do with our belief and Islam. So you can see the impact he left. And he died at the age of 44 years old. Allah tells us in the Quran to be patient when something happens to us, like the most elite, the greatest of the prophets, as we know is Nuh and Ibrahim and Musa and Isa alayhi salam and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can we in reality be as patient as those great prophets? Of course not. But the point is, aim high. Because if you aim high in your life, not just in your deen, even in every aspect of your life, if you aim high, then you can't lose. Because you may not get the highest level you're aiming for, but you're going to get a lot higher than everyone else. And I want to mention a hadith here of one of the Sahaba. He's not very well known to us, like the 10 guaranteed of paradise. Many of us may not even have heard of him. But this is a very profound hadith because, again, it shows the kind of motivation and aiming high in his life that he looked for. His name was Rabi'a ibn Ka'b. And he was so dedicated that one day he went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, and the Prophet ﷺ went to him, should I say, and said, "O Rabi'ah, ask and I will give you." So the Prophet ﷺ, he meant something like a camel or a horse. It was after one of the battles and they had some property. So he said, "O Rabi'ah, ask and I'll give you what you want." So the Prophet ﷺ thought he's going to say, "Can I have a camel or a horse?" or whatever it was. He turned around and said, "O Rasulullah, I want to be with you in Jannah." And he didn't even say Al-Firdaus. He asked to be in the part of paradise which is selected exclusively for the Prophet ﷺ. Al-Wasila and Al-Fadila. Even though he knew, and no one can be in that part of Jannah except the Prophet ﷺ. But that still didn't stop him. He still aimed as high as possible in case it could happen. So the idea is to set your goal high. Don't let people put you down. Don't say to yourself, I know these guys, we said so much today, you guys are probably, you fortune players, and you probably think, "Oh God, not fortune again." Fortnite, not Fortnite again. But the reality is that we've become a society like that. And when I see you guys, obviously I'm talking generally, maybe, mashallah, many of you, we have that brother who was here, memorized the Quran, and some of you memorized the Quran better than me. But what I'm trying to emphasize is so many of us, we spend our time, and I've seen it, I have kids myself, right? So we all see it, that people's lives, and I don't know about the sisters, maybe they're not as tested as much when it comes to these kind of games and stuff, but we see people, literally, it's become like an addiction. You guys must know, you guys who love these games, you feel like you can't let it go of it, right? I've seen it, you spend all your time, all your free time on it, and you have to think about it, right? I'm not going to go into halal and haram and wasting your time is haram, etc., which is it is. But just look, what kind of goals are you setting yourself? Are you really aiming high? Are you spending all those times playing Fortnite or playing whatever it is? Whatever it may be. You could be playing a game. You could be playing football non-stop. Are you really aiming high? Are you really trying to be the best of the best? Are you really setting your goals and trying to achieve by spending so many hours and days on things like this? And the reality is, the Sahaba, they would race each other for Jannah. We're in this thing they call the rat race, right? Everyone's trying to make the most money they can. Everyone's trying to get the biggest house. They were trying to get the biggest car. But the Sahaba, they didn't have the rat race. They had the Jannah race. This is what they would compete in. Nowadays, we compete with our friends, with our family, who's got the biggest car, who's got the nicest watch, who's got the biggest house. They weren't doing that. They were competing with each other to see who could give, or who could do the best in deeds, who could get the most reward, who could get the biggest chance to get to Jannah. There was a time after one of the battles, the battle, I believe, was of Tabuk, and the Prophet ﷺ was asking all of the Sahaba to contribute money, to give charity. So Umar radiallahu anhu came, and he gave first, and the Prophet ﷺ said, "Oh Umar, how much have you left for your family?" He said, "I have half. I gave half to Allah and His Messenger, and I have half of my wealth left." And then Abu Bakr came, and he gave to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Bakr, "How much have you given?" He said, "I've given all of my wealth." This is the kind of thing they were doing, aiming high. Why did he give all of his wealth? His aim was Jannah. We struggle to give a bit of charity because we say we need the money for this, I want to buy a new this, I want to buy a new that. He gave all of his wealth because he set his goals high. Another very profound hadith, which it was reported the Prophet ﷺ said, if the trumpet is called, when the trumpet is called, the believers, there won't be any believers. When that final trumpet is blown, there'll be no one left but the disbelievers. But the Prophet ﷺ said to the people, he addressed the believers, and he said, if the trumpet on the final day is called, and if you are planting a tree, then carry on, continue planting that tree. So there'll be no believers at that time. So what's the Prophet ﷺ trying to say to us? He's trying to say, whenever you have time to do something useful, use your time wisely. Many of us may have heard of that hadith that mentions to use 5 before 5. And one of them is to use your youth before you become old. To use your health before you become sick. And that's the reality. So if we just understood this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is just trying to emphasize to us, whatever time you have, use it. use that time, do not waste time. And most of you, mashallah, are young. You, as Brother Faris said earlier, some of the talks, we may repeat some of the same points, but you guys are the future. You need to aim high. Don't accept, Islam doesn't teach us just to be average, just to be mediocre, just to be like everybody else. We mentioned some of those names of people who led nations, who have books until now. They did not just become the average people. We need to aim higher. And to conclude, I want to mention, I made a list here of 5 practical points we can, inshallah, try to use to aim high. The first one is to understand the blessings of leaving a positive legacy and being productive and proactive. And this is the blessing of knowledge. You need to know your religion, which has been mentioned beforehand, so I won't repeat, and the blessings of knowing and practicing your religion. People, we strive to be engineers and doctors, to live a comfortable life, to have a nice, comfortable life. But we don't give ourselves the same importance when it comes to our knowledge, our Islamic knowledge. So just like we have to strive for this worldly life, we have to strive also for the hereafter as much so. Nothing wrong with being an engineer, nothing wrong with being a doctor. But if you come out as an engineer and a doctor, and you know all these principles and theories of medicine or equations for physics, but you don't know the ins and outs of making wudu. You don't know the fiqh of wudu, which is obligatory upon all of us. You don't know, for example, what if this happens in my wudu? Is it broken? Do I need to repeat it? I missed this particular part of my salah. Was it a pillar or was it an obligatory part? Do I make 2 sujuds at the end or do I repeat my prayer? But you're, mashallah, doctor, professor, PhD. Then in reality, there's a problem there. You need to aspire and aim high in this life and in the hereafter. And the second, and another thing as well, we find ourselves bombarded with, on TV, Hollywood stars. Everyone likes to follow the latest information on this actor and that actor. But in reality, what are we getting from them? They don't teach us anything. They don't teach us good manners. They don't teach us. Most of what we follow and what we look up to has no benefit for us. Point number 2, the Prophet ﷺ said, always look at those above you for religion and those below you for dunya. If you always look at the scholars, for example, and those who are higher than you, again, you can't go wrong because you'll always aspire to be like that scholar. So you'll always be working harder and harder to improve in your religion. And if you look, we find people complaining a lot, right? If their parents don't buy them the latest, most expensive trainers or sneakers, whatever you guys like to call them, or the latest Xbox that's just come out, or they don't buy them, they kind of feel like it's not fair, or if they feel like they don't have what other people have, who may be very rich, they seem to kind of complain and think, I don't have a good life. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you look at those below you, then you'll be happy. Because when you look at those people, there's some people who don't have food. Some people don't have a house to live in. And that reminds me of another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that if a person goes to sleep and he has a roof over his head and he has his daily food and he's in peace and security, it's like he has the whole world. In reality, we may feel like we don't have this and we don't have that, but if you have a roof over your head and you've got food in your mouth, then in reality, it's like you have the whole world, because some people don't even have any of that. And number 3 is the proper companions. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-mar'u ala dini khalili fayanzur ahadukum man yukhalil." That the person is on the religion or the way of life of his companion. So let each one of you look who he takes as a companion. So if you find that you're hanging around with people who are teaching you to do bad stuff, giving you bad examples, find someone else. It's not worth it at the end of the day. There's people on the day of judgment, as Allah says in the Quran, that they will say, woe to me. I wish that I did not take this person as a khalil, as a good friend. He'll bite his hand on the day of judgment in regret for having these kind of companions. So if your companions are only ever telling you, like, check out this music, check out this Hollywood, check out this movie, and nothing else, you need to change your friends. And a good example is of Ibn Abbas. The Prophet, who's heard of Ibn Abbas? Everyone should have heard of Ibn Abbas, right? Abdullah ibn Abbas, right? He was the nephew of the Prophet ﷺ. And believe it or not, when the Prophet ﷺ died, he wasn't a famous person. We know him now to be, they call him Hibr al-Ummah, the pen or like the scholar of the Muslim nation. When Prophet ﷺ died, he was 12, 13 years old. He wasn't of any particular level. He wasn't famous, he wasn't well known, he was just a child. He would go outside and sit on the doorsteps of various companions. And again, this is a bit like Imam Nawawi's story. The other children would say to him, Ibn Abbas, what are you doing? He said, I want to sit, maybe one of them will take me under his wing and teach me. These are the Sahaba of Rasulullah. I can learn from them. And his friends would laugh at them and say, come on, you're 13 years old. These guys aren't going to take you. Until one day, I believe it was Zayd ibn Thabit came out and saw him. I said, Ibn Abbas, why are you sitting outside? And he said, yeah, Zayd, I want to learn. And he took him. And now, what is Ibn Abbas? Ibn Abbas superseded those Sahaba. Many of them that he was sitting outside their houses when he was a child, he superseded them in knowledge. Why? Because he aimed high. Did he listen to those kids? How many of us in life, people put you down? People say to you, you can't do this, you can't do that. You're told you could have done better at school. You should be this. You failed. You should have got an A, you got a B plus, it's not good enough. People do that. Some parents literally say that, right? You didn't get an A. I got an A, Dad. Oh, you should have got an A plus. That happens, right? If he had listened to those other children and not continued, imagine so much benefit we have in this from Islam we wouldn't have received. Alhamdulillah, this is Allah's plan and Allah's preserved His religion. But just to emphasize, not to let people put you down and keep on striving. And as brother Sheikh Abu Mus'ab Abu Wadi touched upon, Al Noble Sheikh, as he already touched upon, death. Okay, we're young, right? We think, oh man, this guy's talking about death. I'm like 14, 15. But we don't know when we're going to die, right? And that's a problem many of us make. We know, you guys probably know this, it's a common thing amongst the young guys, especially unfortunately the Muslim young guys, like, yeah, inshallah, when I'm 40, I'll grow a big beard and I'll become a big mullah and I'll be a good guy, right? But how many, maybe some of you guys in school, I don't know, maybe you've experienced someone from your school dying early, right? In a car crash or sickness. How many, it happens. So we shouldn't have that mentality of saying, I'm okay. I've got plenty of time. I'll just have fun and I'll do it later on, because the Prophet ﷺ said, think frequently of the destroyer of pleasures. What does that mean? What's going to stop you from enjoying your fun? If you die, you can't have all this fun, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he's reminding us that this is where you're going to regret it, right? You lived your life willy-nilly, doing what you wanted, having all this fun. Yeah, it's haram, come on. Yeah, inshallah. And then imagine you die before you get that chance to make up. So Prophet ﷺ said, remember. Because ultimately, as Brother Abu Mus'ab mentioned, this is a temporary life, right? This isn't our end. So you have to kind of weigh up, okay, yeah, everyone else is doing it, but does that mean I have to do it? There's plenty of halal ways, believe it or not. And that's another, kind of going off the topic, but that's another thing that many people think, not even just you guys, young guys, even some adults. They have this misconception, which is maybe from the media, from shaitan, that, everything's haram. But if you look at the reality of things, look at food, nearly everything's halal. The origin of things in Islam is that everything is halal until proven haram. So the majority of things you can do to have fun are actually halal. The haram is a few. Okay, you can't drink, you can't go to a nightclub. Okay, what else? Can you think of anything right now that's not connected to those things? Huh? Fortnite? Well, that's a different fatwa, that one. That's not for me to give. But the reality is, right, but then you can count all the other things you could do. I can go snowboarding, I can go skydiving, scuba diving, I can do so many things. So the reality is, the halal is so much better than the haram. So do we really want to jeopardize our akhirah for a bit of haram fun? Inshallah, and the final one, to end off really, is to make dua and have sincerity to Allah. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to make a dua and to ask Allah to make him mubarak, to make him blessed wherever he goes. So dua, and maybe they touched upon it before, but make dua, because that's one of the ways that you can aim high. You don't just aim high, right? Like I think they might have touched upon. He mentioned Qarun, when he said, this is what I have done. I have done this. This is my wealth. This is my being. I'm the one who did it. So we must aim high, But we have to remember, aiming high and putting our effort comes with making dua to Allah and thanking Allah. And inshallah, that's it for me, inshallah. And I thank you all for paying attention. And any mistakes I made are from me and the shaitan. And anything that was correct is from Allah. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.